Hi, okay, there you are. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
I was just doing an introduction about you and saying how you're one of my all-time favorite people in the world of wine and how you've had a tremendous impact in the United States and a great ambassador for French wines for decades. And have brought some of the most famous names here to the U.S. for the first time and still continue to represent a great array of fine producers, and four of which we'll be sampling tonight together. So perhaps before we get into the wines, I'd love to ask you a little bit about your history in wine, when you first fell in love with wine, what brought you into America, kind of what was the reason you came to America in the first place, some of those early kind of year stories to set the table
Okay.
for our evening together.
Yes. So I came to America in 1964 to get married to a radiologist in Mill Valley, California. And of course, my first few years in the state, I couldn't find any good Pinot Noir except Paul Masson in a supermarket that was really pretty awful, I must say. And, a Chablis, Burgundy in big jug. I just couldn't find anything that I liked. But a bunch of doctors were already starting to collect Bordeaux, and of course, the California Cabernet. And I had Louis Martini, Ingolnock, Krug, and one that really stood out was what's his name? André Chevitchev, who was a winemaker at the time at Beaulieu.
Beaulieu,
So
right.
I decided in 1965 to drive by myself to Beaulieu because I heard he was a great winemaker and it was my preferred wine. So I knocked on the door, and I didn't have any appointment. You could drive to Napa. There was no traffic, no other wineries. It was really weird. And across the way, Mondavi was just starting big in his own. So André Chevitchev took me around the vineyard. He was delighted that I was French because he studied in Bordeaux. And he said, look at the soil. This is not for Pinot Noir. And the climate is not made for Pinot Noir here. It's too hot. If you want to drink Pinot Noir, you got to get it in Burgundy, where you come from. So he planted the seed, and I came back to San Francisco, and I decided to look into the market and to see where you could find some good wine. There was some really nothing wine at cost, well, not Costco in those places, but Cost Plus. And I found one merchant. And so I bought some wine, and most of the wine were imported from England, from Bristol. Right. And so I bought some, and the doctors that I knew at that time said, look, you buy wine, we give you a blank check, you buy Burgundy from us when you find something good. So I used to go around with a corkscrew in my pocket and a little cup, and then I will buy a bottle, go out, taste it, come back in a store. And then, I selected some nice Pinot Noir from Henri. And one day I found one case that was really terrible. The wine was pushed out, was all oxidized. And I came back and I said, look, this is not acceptable. There is nothing wrong with the wine, he said. Technically, they're well made. I said, I don't care, they're undrinkable because they've been baked. So the guy was really unfriendly, and I decided that's it. I got to find another way to get wine. So that gave me the idea to try to find some importers that had some French wine. And I talked to one, he was a German guy, and he was representing Bourgogne Patriarch, and he said, I got the best Burgundy you can ever imagine. And I said, I doubt it. So he sold me a case, and he said, I'll be back in a month to talk to you. So finally he came back and he said, how did you like the wine? And I said, I'm terribly sorry. They are very poor. They're very, not really very, I'm not used to that. It's not the real appellation. And so he said, how dare you tell me? But I said, you asked me a question, I'm honest. No, they are no good. So he said, well, he thought about it and he said, why don't you go and buy wine for me? I give you 5% commission on whatever you buy. And then, you know, you make some discovery. I have a retail license. We can sell it retail. I said, okay, I'll do that. So in 69, I flew on a charter flight to Amsterdam because in those days, you know, there was not a lot of flight to Europe. It was very expensive. So I found a $200 flight on a KQED Channel 9 charter. And I bought a Volkswagen in Amsterdam and I drove to France. And I started with Champagne and I didn't know really anybody in Champagne. And so, but I didn't know anybody anywhere except my hometown, you know, in Macon. So
you kind of started knocking on doors, right? And just
knocking on the door. So I drove to my hometown and I decided to try to get some wine there. And I knew, you know, the neighborhood and I knew some people in Pouilly-Fuissé. So that's how I started with Pouilly-Fuissé and some Macon Blanc. But I noticed, you know, that most of my old buddies, winemakers locally, were outside of town of Prissé, they all went to the co-op because, you know, they sold the grapes.
Right.
The more you made, the better you paid. So, you know, they dumped the grapes there, and there was a winemakers I knew for a few years. I bought from the CAF co-op because there was nobody else making Macon at home, you know, on their own. So
they were making quantity over quality.
The grapes, and they just took care of the vineyard. Only Pouilly-Fuissé and Saint-Véran was just starting Saint-Véran, but Pouilly-Fuissé made wine at home, also at the co-op. But there are lots of winemakers already, little guys. So I started with one, Mr. Guérin, and I think he was the first one to send Pouilly-Fuissé to the White House because Jackie Kennedy, when she came to visit France, she decided she loved Pouilly-Fuissé. So I think the first introduction to Pouilly-Fuissé was at the White House. Nice. That's how it started. So I made so my first trip, I drove to the Rhone Valley. I didn't know anybody in the Rhone Valley. And I went to a small restaurant and I asked the lady who was taking my orders, I said, I'd like to have a great white Côte du Rhône, you know. So she brought me Chateau de Fonsalette white. And I tasted the wine, it blew me away. You know, I said, God, I never thought the white Côte du Rhône was so good. And she said, do you know Monsieur Reynaud, Chateau Rayas? I said, I never heard of him. She said, he makes fantastic wine, you should go. I said, well, give me the address, I'll go after lunch. Can we make an appointment? She said, forget about the appointment. They don't see anybody, but you know, you go to the house and you'll see. So about 2 o'clock, I left the restaurant and I drove endlessly to Châteauneuf-du-Pape because actually there was no sign, no roads, dirt road. You know, it's very difficult. It took me an hour to find the place. There was nobody at the winery. So I went to the house and I knocked on the door and an old lady said, oh, Monsieur Reynaud is doing his siesta. You have to wait until he wakes up. All right, so I sat on the bench and then a truck driver came and he said, Monsieur Reynaud, no, you sit. So there were a bunch of people sitting down, waiting for His Majesty to rise. And he came and he was a small man with a vest, very proper collar and a tie and gold rimmed glasses, and he was very, you know, on a hat. So we went to his old setup, and honestly, he had glasses with no stem. They were all, you know, they were not really clean, you know, just rinse with white water or whatever.
Very cellar down there.
Yeah, but so he went into those caves. He had 2 long corridor, big key, metal door, and he came back with 2 wines. And I tasted the 59 first, and my first mouthful, I said, this is incredible. I can't believe what I have in my mouth. I didn't know what to say. You know, I just swallowed the wine, and I said, gee, well, do you have anything else? He said, yeah, there's 61. So I got the 61 and I bought 25 cases of each for $2.50.
That's a good deal.
Those days. So anyways, that's why. And he said, don't you want to buy from Salette? I said, no, opinion. No, I just want Rayas now. And so I started with 25 cases each of Rayas, and I came back to San Francisco, and the importer was furious. He said, how are you going to sell a wine that you paid $2.50 in France, FOB estate? You know the price of a Chateau du Pape in California? It's $2.50 retail, and you buy yours at $2.50. You can't sell that. I said, I promise you. And he said, if you don't sell it, you have to pay. I said, don't worry. So, so I did my mailing list of doctors and lawyers. I wrote a little newsletter, and I sent my first, I think, lawyers and doctors in San Francisco area. And immediately I had call at home. We like to try a case. And, you know, from one doctor to another, word of mouth, the wine sold very fast. And that was my beginning.
Wow. Great story.
And, so, you know, I have to tell you that honestly, when I started, I knew the wine of the Mâconnais, the Beaujolais, very well. The reason why, because we used to go to the Beaujolais house in Mâcon for a treat, which was only warm sausage, poulet, you know, pâté de Bourgogne, and we tried 8 Beaujolais different in little bottle, and we were trying to figure out which is which and to remember. So that was my training in wine. And of course, when I made the harvest in Burgundy, and started at 10 years old until I finished high school, which was 18, I did all the harvest. And I remember.
Up in the Burgundy region.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my knowledge of Burgundy. But then I decided well, in those days, I registered for la Foire des Vins de Mâcon, which is in May. So I was invited to be a tester. So after that, I went, my Puy-Fuissé man, Monsieur Guérin, invited me to his house to have a drink, you know, to taste his cellar. And he had people from Burgundy, like Santenay, Monsieur Claire, and he said, why don't you come and you meet those people? So there was this old man, Monsieur Claire, and he's Louis Claire, and he said, I said, to do Santenay, do you think I could visit you? He said, yes, you have to give me an appointment now because I have no telephone, because I am, you know, I go hunting and I don't want to be disturbed. I said, right, I'll be there next week. So the following week, I went to Santenay, to l'Abbaye de Santenay. It was a cellar underground. It was an old church underground during, you know, the Middle Age.
Before, because now they're in Gevry. So this was originally, it was in Santenay, or did they have the two places?
It was in Santenay, and so I noticed my Puy-Fuissé producer and other producer was with him because he has invited a lot of people. So, and I was trying, you know, there was a big, large barrel, it was very dark, and he took me aside and he said, look, I'm going to open the bottle, and you're going to take your time, but you have to find the vintage. And I kept him, I said, I never tasted this guy's cellar. I don't know anything about the Côte de Beaune, really, you know. And I said, you know, I couldn't say anything. And in those days, we didn't have glasses. We had a silver cup, the Tastevin. So I soaked my Tastevin, put it on, and gave me the wine. And I went around the cellar, you know, saying, it can't be this, can't be that. And then I said, you know, this is not a very good year. It's 1963. He said, wonderful. And he took me aside. He said, do you want to know somebody in Chassagne-Montrachet? Yes, I said, well, come back tomorrow. I'll take you to a producer in Chassagne. It's how I connected with the Pillot family, Henri Pillot. Mm-hmm. When he came into the cellar with Monsieur Claire, and I know Pio looked at me, said, who is she? And he said, don't worry, she said, well, she knows what she's doing. So that's how my introduction. And from there on, each producer introduced me to a friend of them. They have been in the army together. They knew each other. Like it was the same vintage, 1904 with Monsieur Trappet. So when you went to Mr. Trappet, you look and there was a 904 pile, and those two guys said, well, we are going to drink it together because we went to the army together. The same vintage. It was really funny.
Drink for themselves, yeah. They weren't really thinking about selling it, or
no, they never exported anything. You know, I mean, they had no telephone. They had telephone, but they didn't have copy machine. They didn't have anything. They, you know, they did handwritten their bills, and it was. I mean, besides, they didn't have a telephone, really a portable telephone yet.
right.
They didn't. You know, it was really weird, and they all smoke. All the people smoke, and I remember sort of getting away from them. I mean, it was funny, but I got a very nice reception from everyone without even proving anything, except, you know, they were happy to have somebody French who knew I was not intimidated because I had, like, let's say 8 years experience of harvesting, on staying for the crushing, on tasting the wine. I remember when I was 12 years old, I heard how, you know, the winemaker will say to me, let's see if the Malo is made. Okay, so he said, put your ear on the barrel. Yes. He said, do you hear anything? Oh yes, it's very busy, it's bubbling over there. I said, oh, so the Malo is, and we were tasting. And that's how I learned. And I was, you know, I saw the preparation where you put sulfite stick in the barrel to purify it, and you know, the rinsing of the barrel, rinsing of the crusher. That was wood. I mean, you have no idea those big monster piece of wood that made the crusher. You had to take it all out and put it back, and then I stayed until 1 o'clock in the morning with the guys pushing, you know, the bar to crush the wine.
Very labor intensive. I mean, there wasn't the technology there is today.
And then the red wine will ferment in a vat, in a big vat. And I mean, you know, and I never went to bed because I wanted to see everything and taste everything. I first got my first drunken experience was 1947. I was 13 years old. The wine was...
That's okay in France. I think that's legal in France, right?
Well, I don't know about that. But I remember putting my little cup, and it was 47. The red wine was absolutely fantastic. The neighbor, you know, we didn't hire anybody to harvest. The older neighborhood would come, and they decided which vineyard was ready first. And they all came to you. And then you give back the days they give you by going to their place. So what happened, we had all the neighbors tasting the wine, saying, it's fantastic, what a year's vintage. And I tasted it and I said, Jesus, it's very good. And actually, I had no idea I could get drunk on wine, but all of a sudden I felt dizzy. So I climbed the stairs to the kitchen. Nobody was home, thank God. So I opened the cupboard, cut some slice of bread, and I put some salami, and I ate myself silly. And then I feel better, and I went and I said, I know. Now I know my limit, you know, you can't just, because this new wine is still alcoholic.
Right. Well, so that's, you know, that's an amazing beginning. So it's funny, you actually got your start in the business because of bad wine, the bad wine that you got from the, that California merchant, and then the bad wine this importer kind of gave.
No.
I have to start buying your own wine.
In those days, beside Avery's wine from Bristol, there were nobody. Alexis Lichy a little bit, but mostly big houses like Bourgogne Patriarche, Coron, Montmessin. There was Bouchard, you know, I mean, but they were, you know, very, very little choices.
Yeah, and I've heard stories from people. I mean, basically, what you did is what you had to do. If you wanted an appointment, you had to go up to the door and knock on it. And
Yeah, I know. Then I was introduced by somebody else, so they came to me, and we, we corresponded. Then they gave me their number, because the previous guy, their friend, had recommended me, he had done business with me, so they didn't even ask for my credit or anything. So, see,
right.
when I told my dad that I had bought 50 cases of Chateau Neuf du Pape, that the man didn't know who I was. I mean, it was a lot of money in those days, 50 cases at 250. And so my father, how can they give you credit? They don't know you or anything. But I said, I think I look honest. That I couldn't believe that my father had doubt about it. He couldn't believe those guys. But
yeah, I think they're more farmers and businessmen or artisans than businessmen. And I mean, even in the 70s or 80s, people weren't visiting the Burgundy domains. I mean, you could just walk up to a Ramenet or a Rousseau and just walk in if the timing was right.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then, they were very happy to see me. And they just, from one thing to another, I developed a book. But I was dreaming of having some Côte de Nuit, but I didn't know anybody in Côte de Nuit. So that Mr. Pillot in 1973 came to California on an Alexi or every tour or whatever. And he called me. He was spending an afternoon in San Francisco. They were going around, not only California, but they did a 1-week trip. It was very, very fast. And he called me and he said, Martine, I want to come with my wife, Berthe, to see you at your house in Mill Valley. But I have a winemaker. He's by himself and he looked very bored. And can I bring him over? Sure. So before the three of them showed up, and it was Henri Jaillet who came to visit me in my house in Mill Valley. And he was a very charming man. And I said, oh, you're in Vaud-Romani, do you make wine? Yes. And he said, he gave me immediately his card. He said, I'd love to see you when you come over. And I said, I'll be there next year. So I made an appointment. I wrote to him and he said, okay, come and visit me. So he had piles of wine, of cases of wine already ready to ship. There was 1972 vintage. And he said, the British canceled the order because they think it's the bad vintage. The press was very hard, very harsh on the vintage. So I decided, okay, I will, buy some. I tasted the wine and I decided it's very good. So I bought the Vaud-Romani Village de Nuit Saint-Georges, a little bit of fishes of Vaughan Beaumont, a little bit of Brûlé. I bought, a mix, and that was my first vintage. And after that, every year I came back. Through my list of lawyers and so on, that's how it started in a retail business. There was no wine in restaurant in those days. I was only retail. So then in 76, I decided to change importer, and I found another importer who had a retail also, and he was a doctor and he didn't pay any attention to this business. It was just fun for him to import wine from Germany. So I swear to God that I could sell a lot more, but I would go wholesale and visit restaurant. So I started in 76. And by 1977, I realized I had sold by myself, traveling from Lake Tahoe to San Diego, $450,000 of wine on my own.
Wow.
The guy couldn't believe it. So I decided I need to go on my own because I don't want to sell so German wine. I don't see any future. That's how
The question to you I was trying to get to, when did you decide to do this? So you were just doing so many sales on your own and you're like, I don't need.
No, I mean, I didn't know anybody in the business, but I didn't know any restaurant except I started a French restaurant called Le Camembert in Mill Valley with a bottle of Moulin à Vent, Paul Janin. And the owner said to me, I never had Beaujolais like that. You should go and see René Verdon at Le Trianon. He was a chef at the White House that had a fancy restaurant in San Francisco. Go to see René. I'm sure he would love to see your wine. So from one chef to another, I opened, account immediately. People never had wine like that. They couldn't believe it. They never had a good Chassagne, never had a good Meursault.
You were one of the first people to introduce Great Burgundy.
I know. So it was unbelievable. So I resigned from the firm in 1978. I applied for my federal license or my APC license. I took a second mortgage on my house. And I decided if I lose the house, so what? You can live in an apartment. So you
bet it all on yourself.
And I said, okay.
And then you started
the interest rate went from 8.5 to 11.5 by the time I got my money in June, the next May. On my license in June, and my first container came in July. And before I left for France, I resigned from my job, and at one day, May 1st, 1979, I went around San Francisco. Today, I'm Martine's Wine. Would you like to continue business with me? I pre-sold $30,000 to my customer. I said, sure, congratulations. And that's how it started.
That's great. Well, I know we have a lot of people here that want to ask you some questions. We also have some wines to taste through before we.
Hey, listen, I just opened the champagne.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit. This is a personal favorite. We have the great 2008 vintage Saint Charmant. And
Charmant, Monsieur Coquillet. You know what? Monsieur Coquillet died 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God, sorry to hear that.
The coronavirus killed him.
Oh my God, really? Jeez.
The son called me in tears one day and he said, I just say goodbye to my father. He contacted the virus because he went to Orange, which is the Verizon office,
cell phone store.
Cell phone store to get his phone fixed for his son. His son, who is still at home, one of his son is, like Mongolian, whatever. And he came back. 2 days later, he was sick. Hospital. Wow. Reims was crowded with people. They couldn't handle the dead bodies. I mean, what you would not believe.
Yeah, it's pretty
terrible. It was terrible. So, in 2008, it's a very precious year for me because it's the first year I met the Coquillette. Okay. I made an appointment because I met the grandson at the Pinot Noir celebration in McMinnville. And he had, with a collector of mine, Joel Knox.
Yes.
And a bottle of this Saint-Chamond, an old bottle. And he said, Martine, I want to show you this bottle. It's wonderful. So I tried, I said, it's good. And I see this kid with him. And I said, so you work for your dad? He said, no, I just 21 yesterday. And he looked like Harry Potter, And I said, so what can I make an appointment? Do you have a website? No, I don't have a website. I just don't have a phone. No, I have a computer because I just graduated from law school. Imagine, he was just 21. But I'm not going to work for my father and my grandfather because, they're still active. And can I have another bottle?
Yes.
Oh, wait, please. So I will make contact for you. So I arrived September 15, 2008. It was a glorious year. It was the first day of harvest. Normally, Macon, which is West House, didn't even start the harvest, but it was so warm in Champagne that they had the perfect grapes. I could see those golden grapes. It was an exquisite year. And that's what you're having today. And you just arrive And
Oh, this is a great price for, you know,
he owns 11 hectares in Grand Cru in Chouilly. And
Right.
it's about 8% Pinot Meunier, but it's only Chardonnay. It doesn't make any, you know.
I mean,
So,
it's a fantastic value. I mean, for, you know, for a Grand Cru champagne, what is it, Lily? It's like, how much is this a bottle?
This is, we're selling it for $69.99 a bottle.
Right.
yeah,
So most of
it's
the,
very
yeah, like
inexpensive.
three times the price. I mean, it's actually, you know, for this
Yeah.
quality level, I mean, it's a fantastic, elegant champagne. I mean, really, I mean, the boutique champagne market is kind of really exploding. There's so many great smaller producers, and this is a perfect example, you know, from it. And a beautiful, beautiful champagne, and the
Yeah.
main champagne house that you work with.
Well, you know, it's really funny because when I first met him, he took me to his cellar. He's in Épernay. His winery is in Chouilly, but his cellar is in Épernay. And it's like a mile long. You can't put a forklift in it because it's a very old cellar. It's about a mile long under Épernay. And he has 1 million bottles stashed away. He only disgorge when you place an order.
Very
And
old.
he had Magnum.
It's like we need to do a cellar offering soon.
Yeah.
Keep it moving. Let's keep it moving and go to the Chablis because we want to open
Yeah,
up
sure.
more people.
So Chablis, vérité, c'est Chablis.
The Garnier et Fils. I mean, Chablis is one of the great drinking wines of France. So one of the best starter meals, and there's still a lot of affordable Chablis. I mean, I think this one's about $45 a bottle,
Yeah.
which is not cheap, but it's reasonable compared to, you know, the top level.
No, it's very reasonable. And also, you know, there are two brothers. They have probably 50 acres of land. They work originally, the father used to sell the grape to the calf co-op. But let's see, early 2000, the two brothers decided they wanted to make their own wine. So they started and they established a reputation. And I came in 2013 for the first time to visit those two guys. They didn't have any market yet, you know, they just were, they put large barrel, not, you know, the normal cask, small cask. There is no wood taste in it.
Right.
It's very, you know, the reason I love Chablis is because of the soil. I mean, you know, they have those small little oysters that has been piled up for 5 million years. And then it formed the soil, the Carignan soil. It goes all the way to England. It used to be a sea before. So when you see retired, this sediment, there's layers of small oysters. They are just like the tip of your finger. They're very small, but that makes a difference. You cannot repeat Chablis anywhere else in the world. They can call it Chablis. You don't have that taste.
Right. Right.
I love those oysters.
Unique taste. Yeah, I have a funny story about this bottle because around 4:30 today, my wife asked me, you know, oh, what's around that I can drink? And I said, well, you know, there's this, I'm having some wines from Martine, and there's this Chablis like that. And I said, but listen, just only have a glass or two because I'm doing a tasting tonight. I need to evaluate the wine. I said, like, make sure you cork it back up. And, you know, I had to go run some errands and things. And then, you know, I came back and sure enough, there was like, you know, one glass left for me, which I'm like nursery. So apparently she said, that was really good. I said, yeah, thanks. You know, I could see that, you know, I could see that. But this has been open for, you know, I guess 4 hours for me, which is a long time for a white wine to be open. But it's got this secondary tropical nature, which is really.
I know. And you know,
I'll
tell you, Chablis, when I started in the 80s buying Chablis, it was difficult to buy Chablis. I really, you know, William Fell preached oak. It was so oaky, I couldn't stand it. And I kept saying, I want to find producers that don't put a lot of oak. And one day I'm a producer, and he moved to a bigger place, which is an old milk farm. And they had huge vat. And he said, oh, now I don't have to wear a barrel. I just put wood chip in it. He never saw me again. I said, oh, thank you. And I was, I was so irritated. So anyway, I love Chablis because I love oysters and seafood. So.
Yeah, Chablis is one of the great drinking wines. And you
And
mentioned
Fourchon is one of the best.
The vineyard,
you know, of all the appellations, they have Fourchon, Veau-Laurent, Maumain. I mean, but Fourchon is at the bottom of the Grand Cru. And Fourche is like a fork, so you know, different direction. But you really, in a preferred Premier Cru, Fourchon is top.
Very nice. Well, let's move on to some reds here and get through. We can open up the floor to a few people before our time runs out. So now we have one of my favorites. This a really Topinot.
Oh, you want to do the?
Yeah, the Burgundy. Yeah, but that Rhone is that's got a lot of alcohol there. I haven't tried it yet, but
okay.
I prefer Burgundy before Rhone in general.
Okay, fine. Here it is. I got it.
The Corton Rognier, Topinot 2015. This is kind of a new discovery of yours, like a kind of a, still kind of up and coming producer. I think their wines are great. So tell us a little bit. It's a Grand Cru from the Côte d'Or.
I had this, I did a tasting with Topinot when it came out, probably in 17 in New York. You had several Topinot, and this one was there, plus Mazoyer Chambertin, and Chambertin, and some other. I mean, it was about 5 wines. And I remember the Corton Rognier is what everybody liked best. And I tell you why. Because it's not a heavy wine, it's elegant. And the thing is, talking to Romain, the owner, he said, Martine, this is really topsoil, like a foot of topsoil on rock. And plus this microclimate we have around this hill of Corton, then, the wine never gets heavy, it's charming, and to my great surprise, he sold me some 2007, 2002, and the 7 is unbelievable. I was invited at the Chevalier du Tastevin in Phoenix, and they said, you have to come and bring a wine that you think would be nice for dinner. So I brought a case of this guy, and you know what? There was Musigny, there were great wine, and the wine of the evening, in spite of Chevalier Montrachet and so forth, was my wine. Yeah. Treat yourself to 07.
Yeah, delicious to drink.
Because you can drink it. But the nose.
It's elegant, but it has a lot of richness of the vintage. I mean,
it's rich, it's elegant, but it's not heavy.
Right, not heavy.
And at that tasting in your store, people bought that.
Yeah, I remember it. I remember that was a very great event that we had there. And so we have the one last Rhone before we can open it up to maybe some questions or comments from the crowd. We're going to do the Santa Duke. I only have room for, Martine told me I need to show the bottles, so I hope they look good, but I don't have room for 4 bottles yet.
No. Yes, Santa Duke.
Martine had you on this one.
Well, that's a very famous name, Santa Duke. Really, Jägendas is their kind of home base, right?
You know why? Yesterday, because it was Easter, I cooked a rack of lamb and I opened the Santa Duke. And you know why you like it so much? Because it's 80% Grenache from me.
Yeah. Sounds familiar. Like
a little bit of it's only 10%. I don't know. It's very. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's 80%.
Yeah, and this is just a Côte d'Or. This is a Côte d'Or from them. this wine is like what, $20 or $25 a bottle, something like that.
$20.
$20. I mean, that's, and you know what's amazing about this wine? I was surprised when I looked at the label. It said 15% alcohol. It doesn't taste like 15%.
No.
Very interesting and very smooth. You know, although if I drank a whole bottle, I might feel it in the morning. Those 15% kind of sneak up on you the next day sometimes. But I mean, it's very polished for
Well, you know, why Grenache? It comes from Vaqueras, where also Monsieur Reynaud has, Emmanuel makes his Vaqueras. But it's sandy soil. So therefore, it's a lot of Grenache. It comes from Vaqueras mostly, and then from Séguret and Rasteau and Roax. And then, you know, they raise in huge oak barrel from Austria. That's it. And 10% in amphora.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? So I don't know, but you know, yesterday I drank that wine with my lamb. I couldn't believe the richness of the wine. It's
Right.
a full mouth. You really breathe Grenache.
I'm getting hungry. I think next time I get quarantined, I want to be quarantined with you, Martine, and get like your home cooking and some nice Martine's wines every day. That sounds like a kind of good place to be.
Well, yes, and not bad. I got my godson here with me, who by accident moved because he was looking for another place after, you know, being in colloque with his buddies from USB. And so he moved in, and then of course he's trapped now, he's here, he can't go any place. So I cook for him, he opens a bottle, and he does the shopping, and so we have a good time. And he's learning about wine.
Sounds like you guys have like worked out a good teamwork kind of.
Yeah,
arrangement
right. It could have been worse.
These are great wines. I mean, everything with your name on it, it's a fantastic wine. I don't think I've ever had a bad wine with your name on it, and that, you know, is a
Yeah, and you know, and the new owner with Gregory Castel does a great job. He has increased the book, and Santa Duc came about 3 years ago. And you know, also when my Martine's wine had a good reputation. So what happened is people contact us when they are in trouble somewhere else. That's how it happened. Now, to my surprise, we have
right translation when they like, I'm waiting to get paid from my wholesaler. Maybe I should change, right?
No, it's not that. You know, the distribution is very important.
Right.
My point is the reason I was successful is because I went around with my sample bottle. I talked to the owner on the wine where I will never have sold a wine to make money on a wine I didn't like the taste.
Right.
They were very strict. I fired a lot of wineries. If they didn't perform, sorry. I'm willing to put my time to get a wine on the market. It's not that simple, especially when it's the Burgundies, because you know they are more expensive, and unless you have a gem, you're not going to make it. You know, I mean, look, there are great gems now, but originally when I started, Jaillet was the king, and so Ramonet had already appeared. The rest, Trappet wasn't that good at that time. It was really, you know. People finally realize the difference between négociant wine that are blended and everything and real wine, homemade. And because of Jaillet, I was absolutely strict. You got to cut the crop in half. You have to unfiltered your wine. No filtration.
You told him this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was a pest, but it worked.
Wow, I think, yeah, that was good advice. I think more people should have listened to you, actually.
Well, they did. You know, I mean, the wine Morte is one of my students, but unfortunately, he passed away in '96, probably in January 96, and he was a student of Jaillet. I said to Jaillet, would you please take care of that kid? He's very talented, but he needs to taste your wine to see where he stands now. So Jaillet loved Denis, and he died, unfortunately, he died in January 96. And Jaillet died in September 96. So they both passed away the same year. And Jaillet was very, very upset with the loss of Denis. But his son is doing great.
Right.
So don't complain.
Okay, we have a few questions. Let's open it up. We have got another 10 minutes before we have to switch over to Instagram Live. So we have...
I have one question ready.
Okay, go ahead, Lily.
Someone asked for Martine. I know you've already branched out to including wines from England in your portfolio, but what do you consider kind of the up and coming regions in the world?
You know, there's a lot of places now, wine that you never, I don't taste everything. I don't like over-extracted wine, powerful wine. But you know something, I've been representing Newport for a long time, and I started only with a port. And then gradually, Dirk being such a fan of Burgundies, he was convinced that he could make some great red and white wine. He was the most influential winemaker in Portugal to tell everybody, you know, instead the grapes that are not used for the port, they used to sell it, you know, to the market for no. But Dirk decided he was going to make wine. And I think Portugal is really the up and coming place where, you know, we had the Spaniard, we had the Italian, was first and so on. But Portugal was a gem coming out. And still, we're going to see a lot of fantastic wine in Portugal. Once, and I don't know if you see A Year in Port, my movie.
Yeah.
So you see what I mean? There's a lot. Oh, this is really amazing. But
That's a good idea. We should
you
get
see,
Dirk on here one of these weeks. He's a very engaging guy, and he's a super wine taster. I mean, he
oh yeah, oh, he's
travel,
amazing. Yeah, and he's a great cook also.
Oh, really? I haven't gotten that invitation yet. You know,
Well, you should.
You know,
I put a word for you.
right. Thank you very much. So
another question we got was,
yeah,
somewhat to the both of you, both John and Martine, what do you think that the COVID-19 crisis will do in terms of the harvest season in Europe and around the world, and how that will affect the vintage overall, if at all? We don't really know. I don't.
I tell you, right now I've been in contact with my producers from Burgundy. So what they do, the employees have to come individually with a car to go and work in the vineyard. And the ladies that are doing the pruning, they can't stand each row next to each other. They have to be 6 feet, 6 feet. So they said now they come home and they're out of, they don't have any voice left because they have to scream at each other to carry on a conversation. But anyway, the thing is, you know, I don't know what's going to happen to the harvest, but I think a lot of cooperation will have to come from the neighbor. I work in your vineyard, your grapes are riper before mine, and then you help me with it. I think, you know, it's going to happen this way. But, you know, the wine market is very disturbed now because they can't sell any wine at all in Europe either. There is no delivery. There's, you know, it's dead. And then here in America, nobody, we lost all the restaurant business. I mean, we don't know if we're going to be alive in a month. You know, I mean, it's just, that's how it is.
yeah,
It's very, very bad.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, the top wines are going to continue to sell and continue to have their market because they are the best of the best of the best. But you know, other wines, there's so many wineries that you know might need help and might need hopefully can find a way to manage and get through. But the on-premise, no restaurant wine is a huge blow to kind of everyday wines, and some of the wines.
You know what happened? I notice now that the restaurant are putting their wine list, their wine stock for sale.
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking to quite a few big groups in New York, and the state of New York, the SLA, State Liquor Authority, actually informed us that restaurants are not allowed to sell their collection unless they declare bankruptcy first, which we're trying to work and get that on Cuomo's desk and help these restaurants out and really get, because it's absurd. I mean, some of the laws, California actually made it legal, so the California restaurants.
Yeah, in California, yeah.
Which is always more liberal, but it was just crazy we got notified like, hey, by the way, don't help any restaurants, and it's just like, really? I mean, so we're trying to lobby that and help some restaurant groups out in New York, because, some of these places might want to liquidate their collections, and just to keep the lights on for 2 or 3 months and get through this, and pay people and pay, their key people and the rent and everything else. So it's really, it's just, maybe some good will come out of this because there's so many laws.
And also you have to to see that in January we had to enforce 25% tax, import tax. So we had to raise the prices already, and then the virus came. I mean,
have you found that as the shipments as the volume come down, somebody's asking, because of the tariffs, it would have to be, I think, some of the volume.
No, I mean, the business, actually, we had very good business in November, December, before it didn't reflect yet the 25% tax because it arrived before the date. So this November, December were very good months, and then January, the shipment arrived tax. So that slowed down, and then now there is no business.
Right.
Simple.
Right.
All of the out-of-state
right.
distributors don't buy. A lot of people don't have the money to pay. The checks bounced. I mean, it's big trouble. I mean, the wine industry is in deep trouble. If you don't have deep pockets, I don't know what you're going to do as an importer. Very.
One very kind of interesting question from Alan, our friend Alan, for Martine. Martine, the most famous producer in Burgundy that you've worked with, Henri, was completely against whole cluster fermentation, as I think is very famously known. Do you think at all that the changing weather conditions as a result of global warming will dictate a different perspective on producers using whole cluster fermentation to kind of redirect the style of the wines?
This I cannot tell you. What I think is, the stem brings like 4%, the tannin, I think, increase by 3% if you use the stem. Now, there are look at Madame Leroy, for example. She has 20 people on the sorting out table. They are elbow to elbows. On each grape, they take a little bit of stem. By the time it arrives to her, which is when it's dumped in a bucket, there is nothing left. There is only, the stem is probably that much. You understand what I mean? Everything has been clipped, all the bad grape has been, even one little bunch, boom, she discard. So you see, it's not, I don't know, Jaillet was against the stem because of the tannin. And I think probably people will have to destem if they don't want, we have in great vintage in Chablis, in Champagne, for last, I would say 10 years, because of the global warming.
Yeah.
Before Chablis, it used to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
They had the frost in May, they lost their crop. I remember they had sprayed water over to make, you have no idea, those poor people. 1 year out of 3, they had a good vintage. Now, every year, it's nice Chablis, nice Champagne, We never had so many good vintages because of global warming. No, you know, so that's all I can tell you. I just don't know, but I think probably they will have to go away to not to use stems. That's for sure. They have to destem at some point.
We're going to have to go away now too. In fact, we're going to have to bring you back again maybe next month and have a more Q&A session here. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
sure.
information and so, you know, I mean, the stories you have and your perspective and insight are truly both amazing and inspirational. And I thank you very much, Martine, for being here and joining us. And now we have to switch over. We could stay longer, but we have to switch over. We have this 9 o'clock Instagram live commitment in 3 minutes. So you can join us on Instagram live to continue, and we'll bring Martine back. Thank you everybody for joining us, and maybe get a little more interaction with everybody next time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. Love you.
Thank you.
I'll see you in 3 minutes.
Okay, bye.